Hey there, so today we have another beer talk, and this is a really exciting find. This is gonna be a little bit of a ramble, so sit tight and watch out for it. It's about a podcast. So I was actually listening to Hop and Brew School, which is on the Brewing Network, which is super intense. If you guys wanna learn about hops and get really geeky, I love it. One of the best educational super geeky podcast you can check into is Brewing Network, Hop and Brew School. But one of the people that works for Yakima Chiefs was one of the general guests on there. He mentioned something called Can You Brew It? Which is a podcast that existed on the Brewing Network, literally started a decade ago. To date, how old this podcast is, they had one of the brewers say, "Hey man, did you hear about this new hop called Citra? I just reviewed it, and I just brewed a beer with it, and why don't you guys taste it? It's a new beer with Citra. It's supposed to be pretty exciting, blah, blah, blah." And it's so crazy. Like, Citra is one of the most popular hops in American craft brewing right now. And to think of, like, wow, like they were on the, bottom ground, like learning about Citra, So what is Can You Brew It? So Can You Brew It is just one of the most wonderful ideas that I could imagine in brewing and in podcasts. It is a podcast where you have Jamil Zainasheff, one of the famous brewers out there, home brewer, wrote this book, and also is owner brewer at Heretic. And pretty much what they do is they get a commercial beer like Lagunitas. They ask the head brewer, "Hey, how do you make this beer? What's your recipe? What's your process?" They get the grain bill, they get the hops, they get the mashing schedule, they get the fermentation temperatures, they get dry hopping schedule, they get all the kind of process that they do. And then them as home brewers are on the small scale. I mean, they're either semi-professional / amazing home brewers, brew it on a 6-gallon batch, and then they try to do it at the end of the episode. Hey, have you actually cloned this recipe? Which is absolutely fantastic. Such a novel idea, and I'm very surprised that there aren't any podcasts that do it that way. Because, I mean, in my mind, if you're going to be a brewer, obviously, like, American craft beer is like so crazy. Like, it's like, oh, I just made this beer, I threw like pine needles in there, whatever. But like, one of the great ways to really become great at anything is to emulate and be able to replicate what someone does to that pure execution with your process, and then try to do your own kind of thing. And this is a podcast that really geeks into that. If you're not a super beer geek, you're not a home brewer, I highly recommend still, because you're going to learn a lot about brewing. You're going to learn about, why are they mashing at these temperatures? What do these hops do to a beer? Why are they using these malts? Why are they choosing this yeast strain? And every time you listen to the podcast, you literally just spend some time listening to this podcast, Google a bunch of this stuff, and you're going to learn so much. And then you end up at the end of the video finding out, or the podcast, finding out, did they clone it? Did they clone it? And actually, for this one, they actually cloned it, which is pretty crazy. The fact that, like, you just give somebody a recipe and they're able to clone it. If you don't know about home brewing and brewing at the professional scale, a lot about brewing is the ability to have great process. One of the things that a lot of people say is like, yeah, I can give you the recipe, but you're not going to recreate my beer. But this is an attempt at it in a podcast, and it's like super geeky. I love it, and it involves many of your favorite beers, classic beers, Lagunitas IPA, and Jolly Pumpkin Bomb Beer, and Deschutes Black Butte, and Stone Arrogant Bastard, and Firestone Walker Union Jack. And it's so cool to get an interview with the pro brewer, the brewer. So you get Matt Bernelson from Firestone Walker, Jeremy from Lagunitas, and so many like important heads in craft brewing, and get them to talk about the recipe and their creation of the beer. And it's just so fun. And even for chefs out there and bakers out there, like, if you're trying to open a burger restaurant, like, you probably want to emulate something. And so, like, well, if I like Shake Shack or if I like In-N-Out, maybe I should try to recreate that, cook it at home, and then have it next to a product that is like, so popular. And if I can create that, then therefore, like, I'm already at the process that I'm able to create something equivalent to, like, something that's super, super successful. And then therefore, then I can do my own twist on it, right? I think that's generally should be the goal of a lot of people that are doing anything. If you're trying to do any kind of hobby, your goal is to recreate something that you're inspired by, that is recognized to be great. And if you can achieve that, then you can do your own thing. And if you can do your own kind of greatness. But at least at the bottom level, you want to sort of emulate what other brewers do. So, like, I'm very curious, because, like, it seems like not a lot of craft breweries work on that. I think a lot of craft breweries end up just like making the recipes, trying out the beer, blah, blah. But, like, hey, if I go to a local brewery and I put a can of, Lagunitas IPA down, or I put a bottle of Founders Porter down, or if I put a bottle of Weihenstephan Original or Weihenstephan Hefeweizen or a Treehouse Julius, like these are like some kings and classics, but also hype ones. And if I put that can or bottle next down to your brewery and I try your beer on draft, can you tell me that your beer is that good? Or can you tell me that like we're of equivalent quality? Generally not. But isn't that the goal of everybody to strive to make beers that good? And so this sort of like emulates that in the sense that like this home brewer was able to clone the beer and was able to, you know, replicate that process and like really use those ingredients, get that great interview from a brewer, and then use it on their own process. So for the home brewers, highly recommend. Obviously, this is one of the best podcasts you could probably recommend to home brewers, but also just a really geeky one that I really enjoy because it really brings you through the entire thought process of recipe and all the ingredients in a beer. So lovely, lovely stuff. It's a decade-old podcast, but it's one of the gems, one of the best things I've found all year involving beer. Highly recommend. Can You Brew It from the Brewing Network. Until next time, guys, cheers. Later.